I feel like celebrities kind of pick and choose the things that they become outraged about and the things that they are concerned about in the public space and on social media, and how convenient activism can be sometimes.
Let me put you on game.
So there has been, we kind of live in a very tumultuous point in time. I guess history in general is always tumultuous. It just depends on where and when you are. But especially with the 24-hour news cycle and just so much access to global information, we can see a lot, and there's a lot going on. Right now, the NBA makes a lot of money in the Chinese market as well as Hollywood. And we're seeing some interesting things happen in the world today. And it's interesting to me because I don't feel like there's enough conversation around it. And what's the most troubling is the way that I feel like celebrities kind of pick and choose the things that they become outraged about and the things that they are concerned about in the public space and on social media, and how convenient activism can be sometimes. So I was just looking at the numbers, and China has eclipsed the US as the biggest movie market. And when you look at the TV deals that the NBA has with China and how much money is generated by the streaming of different basketball games in China, you realize that um, there's a big pot that gets generated from that market. But and that's all well and good. But at the same time, there's also an astounding amount of silence that comes from celebrities and athletes alike to some of the atrocities that happen in China that don't really get spoken about a lot as well. And it's interesting when you contrast those same issues that happen in that country compared to the issues that happen domestically in America, and how much those same individuals really bring up issues about LGBTQ rights, about discrimination rights, and human violation rights that happen abroad, that happen domestically versus what happens abroad. And it just made me wonder, are we holding our celebrities to a high enough standard? And what does it mean to be an activist and a movie superstar, a basketball superstar, and what they owe to the public and the people and markets that support them?
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. I certainly understand the feeling that uh, some of these celebrities have fallen short in certain areas when it comes to speaking out about certain things, because it's clear that they have financial motivations or they have financial investments in those particular areas. So I understand that on one end, but on the other end, I never look to my celebrities or movie stars as role models for behavior and role models
Mm,
for how to conduct themselves. So it's like,
mm,
I don't necessarily expect perfection from them because I don't expect perfection from the everyday person. So for
mm,
me, some of these celebrities are placed on these pedestals because of their fame or because of their talent. But at the end of the day, for me, they're regular people.
mm,
So it's like, we don't expect perfection from those the people in our lives, but we expect perfection from them, you know? So it's like with certain celebrities, like I guess we can use like LeBron James as an example,
right.
where he's very outspoken about issues that occur in the United States and that occur and that affect Black people. But when he was asked about China, when the Daryl Morey situation came up, he was very quiet, and that's because Nike has such a huge base in China. So naturally, the response is, well, why do you care about that one thing, but you don't care about this other thing? And even though your argument is legitimate, uh, the argument brought against LeBron was brought up I will say, by people that I don't think care about either issue. And
Mhm.
they try to use that as like a way to detract from LeBron, to say that you're a hypocrite or you're this or you're that, when they actually don't necessarily care about Black Lives Matter or the lives of uh, Islam followers in China. So
Yeah.
it's like a double-edged sword. But I say all that to say that we talked about it off air, but I'm not in the line of belief that celebrities need to be all things to all people. For me, if someone like LeBron is building a school, or someone like John Cena is uh fulfilling make-a-wishes and is the leader in that, and is actually doing a lot of good domestically, I don't
Mhm.
necessarily think that they have to address issues abroad that aren't close to them, because these issues that they're facing or talking about, as far as issues with people of color in the United States, are a lot closer to home than issues that are across the sea. And I think that all humans operate in that way. I think all humans naturally gravitate towards and empathize more with issues that affect people that look like them, or people that they could potentially know, rather than people that are far away from them. So for
Right.
me, that's kind of personally where I sit in regards to that topic.
Right. And I think that, you make some valid points in just the reality of what it's like to pick a cause and to really align yourself with that cause and to be a spokesperson of a particular cause, because none of us have the capacity to worry about every single thing that happens throughout the world. We kind of choose our lane and choose our focus. The thing that's kind of, I guess, that disturbs me overall is that we I just think that overall we can all be better. I
Yeah.
think that overall, when you look at some of the issues that has kind of come out of China, where human rights defenders are silenced, they don't allow foreign aid and journalists to places like Tibet, and the Uyghur Muslim areas. The obfuscation of the initial COVID outbreak that has resulted in a, an astounding amount of death, as well as financial ruin for a lot of places and countries. The U.S., as well. The When I learned about African residents that were kind of evicted from their homes based on COVID protocols that they enacted in China, um, and or the way the internet is censored and citizens can't really speak up, the way LGBTI festivals are canceled, and there's rampant homophobia within the Chinese government, from what I hear, as well as protesters getting dispersed for peaceful gatherings, and just the way that celebrities, let's say any of that were to happen in the US, you would see people getting on their high horses, especially now that Black Lives Matter has become mainstream. It's very convenient to talk about those issues in America. And then you also sometimes see celebrities talk about those issues maybe in the Middle East. We're kind of seeing with the Israeli-Palestine conflict, how people are really lobbying for there to be peace in that region. And it's like, yes, let's have peace there, but let's also kind of hold these at least the Chinese market to the same standard, where but because so much money is generated, there's just not as much of an effort to hold them to the same standard, to hold that government to the same standard. And it to me, I just feel like it would be a disservice to not at least bring it up, to not talk about it, and to not say that, hey, this is kind of a blind spot that we should be a little bit more aware of. And if we're going to continue to, if our celebrities, if people who generate revenue are going to continue to maybe kowtow and cower because they're afraid of the next check not being cut to them, it's not a good precedent, because it doesn't continue to speak truth to power, which we put our athletes on a pedestal to, in some ways, to be able to do nowadays. we hope that they actually speak truth to power. We admire LeBron James for being able to do that. We admire John Cena for being able to be a place of comfort to people who have terminal illnesses. And so the athletes kind of start this whole trend of being activists in some way. And hey, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, unfortunately.
Right.
So yeah, I think we can be better. And I think that we should continue to hold powerful governments abroad or domestic accountable for their actions. If the Chinese people can't really speak up, we should be able to speak up, at least for the average citizens who still over there who still continue to consume American goods as far as media is concerned.
Right. I just think that I agree with so much of what you said. I just think that we need to also have a conversation about, should we hold these celebrities to that standard? Should, like, there's so much, celebrity culture is so odd, and that we do place these people upon pedestals, and they almost always fall short of what our expectations are. Like, very few people live up to it. So it's like, with certain celebrities, I just can't bring myself to expect more of them than I expect of myself. So it's like, we can say all these issues about China and all these other markets that are being ignored, but at the end of the day, like, how many Americans are really willing to divorce themselves from everything that has to do with China in protest of what atrocities are going on over there? Like, the irony is just always there. Like, for example, like in my own life, like, I'm a vegetarian because I do not want to engage or associate myself with the suffering of animals, right?
Right.
But I'll get on Amazon.com and order vegetarian food from there, knowing that Amazon itself is committing human rights violations by the way that they treat their employees. And we all know that. So it's like, we all operate in this space where we have our beliefs and we have our convictions, but sometimes they only go so far. It's like, I'm almost ashamed to admit that my moral high ground only goes as high as, I guess you could say, like, the platform of convenience. You know what I mean? So it's like, we need to look at these athletes and these celebrities as people. Like, Muhammad Ali was special for a reason. He was special because he was willing to sacrifice everything for what he believed in. He was willing to decline the demand to go to war because of his religious beliefs. He was willing to give up his money. He was willing to potentially give up his assets, and he gave up his world heavyweight title for that. Most athletes and most people aren't doing that. Most people will be revolutionaries to a point, and that point normally is messing up the bag. And I think that as long as we understand that, like, I think that we can operate in a better place, because when we do have these conversations, sometimes I think that there is the benefit, like you said, of bringing awareness to those human rights violations, but it also kind of casts this shadow over the good things that these celebrities have done. So if you're talking about LeBron James, and you're talking about him falling short in regards to the speaking up on China, then, like, that kind of casts a shadow over the fact that he built a school for underprivileged kids. So it's like, it's like a double-edged sword. But I do appreciate us having this conversation, but I do think that we as a society need to be more realistic for what we expect from our celebrities, because having these idols, having these role models, like, they all ultimately let you down. Like, how many times have you heard about your favorite artist or your favorite musical artist, like, low-key being trash? and then you got to make the decision about, like, do I want to continue to listen to their music? Do I want to continue to watch their movies? Like, do I want to continue to intake their content? Like, it's tough, so it's a tough line that we walk. But I think, for me personally, as long as they're doing something good overall, I can personally excuse like a little negligence to not mess up the bag, but that's just me. Because I it's a nuanced conversation, like you said.
Yeah. And I think you kind of help to point out the hypocrisy that we all engage in on a daily basis in order to be able to live with ourselves, because otherwise we would all fall short of the morals that we probably personally believe in. And that's the consequence of being human. That's the consequence of having a moral compass. We But at the same time, we have to be able to point out our own hypocrisy, reflect on our shortcomings, and figure out ways to advance forward. And I think this whole everybody has to get the bag at any cost mentality is it can lead us to be corrupt in some ways, and we have to be wise enough to recognize which ways those are and demand more of ourselves personally if we want to see a better world for everybody around us. And it is that that self critique that helps us to figure out our shortcomings and to be better overall.
Yeah.
So although I'm not going to pretend like I'm great, I'm not going to pretend like I'm perfect. I use Amazon as much as the next person. I have phones that are made in Chinese factories that have nets on the side of them so that the workers can't jump off of it, and commit suicide and catch them and put them back on the assembly line, which is
Yeah.
wild, but it is what it is. And so let's continue to
Just all try to
reflect.
be
Let's
better. Yeah.
Yeah, let's, and I guess control what you can control in your own backyard before you go out and criticize another person's yard.
Right.
Right.
I also wonder, like, just as an aside, like,
Hmm.
how much of this getting the bag mentality you talked about just now, how much of that is like a symptom of capitalism? Because at the
That's
end of the day, that's a whole, like, I know that's a whole bag of worms, but it just
yeah.
came to me. I was just like, we live in a capitalist country, and that's kind of what capitalism is about. It's about free market. It's about essentially chasing the bag and the opportunity to do so. So it's like growing up in that and being ingrained in that. Like how like how much does that affect someone forsaking morals in favor
Mm.
of uh, potential profit?
And compensation. Yeah. I mean, it does greatly. And I think that there's a certain amount of separation that we put towards to be able to live with ourselves and say, hey, well, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. So my conscience is relatively clear. Yeah, I'm not being the best, but at least I'm trying. And I think we kind of make that excuse for ourselves, and, to be able to live with the choices that we all ultimately have to make. And hey, I get it. I completely get it. I live it. I'm a part of this culture just as much as LeBron is, and we're all a part of this society and this experience that we have as conscious creatures. Um, but it remains to be seen how we can best serve each other and figure out better ways to live in harmony and peace, and to, just overall decrease suffering that we see.